Okay, so hey guys, and honestly, I feel like I'm about to tell a scary story or something because I'm sitting basically in my dark room with just this light on, and this light is so freaking blinding. I don't know how people with ring lights deal with this because that light is so bright and you guys are right under it, and so I'm like, I need sunglasses. Enough complaining because this lighting looks pretty good. I feel like I look pretty good in it. So let's get on to what we're talking about. So for a while now, I've actually been wanting to do little book reviews and stuff, and I have our first book. I don't really have much of an audience right now to actually be doing book reviews with, but I always thought that it would be a cool idea to do an online kind of book club thing. And so yeah, for Christmas I actually got this book by I can't pronounce Japanese names, so please excuse me if I pronounce this wrong. Osamu Dazai? That's probably so bad. But I will just say No Longer Human. I got No Longer Human, and I have to say this was such a good book, so I'm just gonna go through, kind of talk about it. If you have not read the book, you need to read the book before you watch this video because I'm gonna spoil things for you, because yes, that's what we're talking about today. But the whole reason I got interested in his works was because actually I watched an anime. And yes, I am kind of an anime nerd. I'm very, very specific about the types of animes I watch. I don't like stereotypical animes. But one of the animes I watch is called Bungo, something like that, Stray Dogs. Basically translates to literary stray dogs. And basically they take different authors. Of course their main focus is Japanese authors because animes are from Japan. And so they take a bunch of different authors and stuff and they just put them in a lot of fun scenarios. All of their characters are named after authors, and they have small quirks that the author has, and then they also have superpowers that are basically named after different famous works that they're known for. And so this is the name of Dazai, the character in Bungo Stray Dogs. This is the name of his ability, and so I was like, because I'm obsessed with that character in the anime. And then as I kind of dug down, I found some quotes from this book, which is actually what really piqued my interest. Originally I wasn't going to get anything, but I actually have always loved reading and looking at different people's works. So that is just a little story of how I ended up coming to reading this book. So overall, it was a really good book. There was a moment where in the beginning chapters, they're divided into notebooks. So in the first notebook and partway through the second notebook, I really liked our main character, Yozo. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Forgive me if I'm not. My Japanese pronunciations are non-existent. But then through pretty much the rest of the second book and all of the third book, I almost found him to be a completely unlikable character. I even begin to doubt if I even like the book as a whole, because the character just took such sharp, bad life decision turns. And through reading the book, I occasionally wondered if there were certain things that were getting lost on me due to cultural differences. I don't study a lot about Japanese culture. I know very limited things about Japanese culture, and of course our writer is Japanese. And so there were certain things that I was like, is this because of Japanese? In the book it's talking about suicide, and just the way that the family of Yozo treated his suicide attempts was very foreign and strange compared to how we would treat someone who attempts suicide in the United States. So that was just very interesting to see, and I hope that I will understand Japanese culture a little bit better the more Japanese authors I read, so that way I can kind of understand more of what's happening there. But in the very first few pages of the book, I very much felt myself reflected in this character, honestly. I could definitely see some shared ideas that we had about the world. I think you can immediately notice pretty quickly off the back that our character has severe social anxiety and suffers with probably quite a bit of depression from what I can see. the thing where we start to vary, which is why I found him to be a dislikable character towards the middle and almost to the end of the book, was because of the way he reacted to his situations. Because even though me and him, I feel like we're very similar, the way we reacted to our situations and how we ended up viewing people were very different. He actually took quite a negative approach and went on a whole down spiral in his life, and literally like reading all of his blunders just made me like cringe. I was like, dude, just stop drinking, don't freaking take the morphine from that stupid pharmacy lady. And it was just like, it just made me want to reach through the pages and grab Yozo and be like, stop. Because every time as we were getting further and further into his adulthood, I just kept thinking of the point where he talked about how he always wanted to please people, and how he wrote that he wanted a mask in his father's book because he thought it would please his father. And I just kept thinking of that, and I was like, you're telling me this boy is the same man who's doing all this stupid crap right now? And just his blunders with women and everything. And honestly, a lot of his relations with women, I feel like I'm all over the place right now. I'll figure out how to do these more efficiently eventually, but I feel like a lot of his blunders with women probably actually went down to his sexual abuse, which is hinted at in the beginning. One of the maidservants, he said, corrupted him, so that very much makes me think either molestation or rape at a very young age for a child. It doesn't specify how old. I think that definitely bred mistrust in him towards women, and I think even though it's not super noticeable at first, I think you can definitely see as you read how he kind of mistrusts women, and just how his relationships are really affected by it, even though I don't think he's cognitively put two and two together quite yet until later when he's writing these notebooks. I think his view of women also I found to be slightly distasteful, and on some occasions I found it slightly sexist, and I had to really think, is this Japanese culture speaking, or is this our main character's sexual abuse speaking? Talking about how he could never understand women, how all of his problems would go away without women. There were just a lot of different things. But really what hit me was at the end of the book when he finally gets to the whole title of the book, how he was disqualified from being a human being once he was institutionalized. So he was put in a mental hospital because he had been binge drinking and just going crazy. And I think that was just a very interesting and very hard-hitting point in the book, because, I mean, it's kind of true. Sometimes when we know that someone goes into a mental hospital, we kind of do remove them from humanity. We kind of act like they're separate from us because most of us can't comprehend what they're going through, and so it's just easier to create walls and shut ourselves off from things that we don't really understand. Someone acting crazy, or you know, they have a mental issue, I don't know how to really word it, but it's almost like, it's just how he said, like, they're not human, they are no longer human, they're just kind of there doing whatever, and a lot of their actions become excusable because it's like, well, they're not really human beings, which is a really messed up mentality to have. I mean, I think it is definitely a mentality that most people carry around without even realizing it. And so I think the overall book towards the end actually has a really interesting ending, because it started off, like I said, I found him super likable, and then he just made mistake after mistake after mistake, and I was just like, dude, I'm about to hate you in this entire book. And we end not with our character necessarily being happy. You know, Yozo has finally been out of the institution, he's living kind of by himself with just this one maidservant, and he doesn't ever really say that he's happy, he just says that everything passes. And this is a very true statement, and I definitely lately have kind of felt that way. Everything just kind of passes, and sometimes I don't necessarily feel happy or sad, you're just kind of neutral. But to me, there was kind of hope, because he said at the end that he was only 27, and the way this book had carry on and carry on, I really thought that he was like 40. And when he said he was 27, I was like, dude, he is so young. And it just kind of gave me hope that even though I know how his path has been, it's just kind of like, you know, he's so young. What if he did turn his life around? What if? You know, he probably could never live a completely normal life because of what he's been through and what he's done. But that doesn't mean he can't be happy, doesn't mean he can't continue to receive help, doesn't mean he can't get better, because he's so young. And the way that the book had described him, it just made it feel like he was living forever, like this dude was like 40, 50, like it was time to go. But he was really so young during this whole book, which was just shocking to me. I don't know, I feel like I could talk for hours about this. I think one of the things that I struggled with the most that I found very frustrating, as I mentioned earlier in this video, is how Yozo's family treated him after his suicide. I mean, of course the father has every right, well, maybe some people would argue that he has the right, but I would say he has kind of the right to be upset that his son attempted suicide, because it did put him on blast because he is a political official. However, even if you're upset, you shouldn't really show that you're upset to someone who just committed suicide. You can be mad at them, but I don't think you should be like, I'm mad at you. But you know, Yozo could have been spared so many misfortunes if his family really just would have been there for him after his first suicide attempt, if they would have done what they ended up doing at the end of the book, and if they would have institutionalized him, maybe not necessarily in a mental hospital, but like rehab or something, and then get him mental help. What is my cat doing? Because I don't think necessarily that he had to be in a mental institution. Maybe after the point of his morphine addiction, he really needed to be in a mental institution. I would probably argue more he needed to be in rehab. But it's because his family turned away from him that things just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Because just no one would freaking come and grab this kid and sit him down and say, what the heck are you doing? And we see Flatfish in the book attempts to do that, but basically he fails because he still lets him escape in the end. When he went and ended up living with that lady, instead of being like, oh yeah, you guys will be legally married, I don't know who on earth thinks that's a good situation. I think Flatfish was kind of selfish and just wanted to be rid of the whole situation, which I mean makes sense. It's not his kid, it's not his responsibility. But when he basically said, I'll take ownership for you. And then as soon as he saw a way out, Flatfish was like, adios. And if he wouldn't have been married to, oh man, I don't remember her name, Michiko? Shizuko. Okay, I don't know if that's correct pronunciation. But after he ended up living with Shizuko, I think is when his life really took a turn for the worse. Because for a moment there I thought he would be happy, but you could just tell that she was kind of an oppressive figure on his life. She wasn't super nice to him. She didn't bring him out of the shell like she really should have. Because what he really needed to do was tackle his social anxiety, because throughout the book the entire theme is really social anxiety, and his depression becomes a product of his social anxiety, in my opinion. So honestly, her oppressive behavior and just pushed him further into this, and not to mention that she allowed him to continue to drink. That's the thing, is pretty much everyone in this book just allows him to continue to drink. They all say, stop drinking, but no one actually is willing to step up and take action to get him to stop drinking. Sorry that my phone is going off. All of the issues with him continuing to drink, no one stepping up, no one taking this guy and just being like, you're a young kid, what are you doing with your life? And I think, honestly, a lot of problems could have been solved if he... I'm sorry if you hear my cat, she's scratching at her scratching pose. I feel like a lot of his issues actually may have been solved if he would have confronted the sexual abuse when he was a child. Like, if he would have done it while he was still young. Because if he would have done it and things turned out how they probably would have, with the maidservant being fired and it all being like are you okay, son? I think he would have learned to trust people, and I think if he would have learned that earlier on, then his life would have been much, much easier. But even though this book doesn't necessarily end on the happiest note, I think we do get to see some character development despite the fact that he just seems to keep falling repeatedly in his follies. Because at the end we see Yoshiko, I'm probably so bad at these pronunciations, but his final wife, Yoshiko, offers him his morphine again, and he says, I don't think I'll need it. And he said that was probably the first time in his entire life that he learned to say no. So that was like one of the first times in his entire life that he had actually said no to someone. And so I think if he would have learned to trust people, and if he would have learned to say no, and if he wouldn't have met freaking Horiki, I don't think I said his name right at all, but his stupid like little friend, literally the worst friend on the planet. I understand that to a certain extent it's Yozo's own fault because he has control over his own actions, and so you can't completely put the blame on Horiki, especially since he didn't know that Yozo has an addictive personality clearly, coupled with social anxiety and sexual abuse is not gonna be a good mixture. So you can't put all of that on his friend, but he was the one who introduced him to drinking, which ended up being his huge problem throughout the rest of the book. And ultimately gave him alcohol poisoning and probably ended his life very quickly. But like I say, I think the book ended on a good note, because for a while there I was like, man, Yozo's just gonna kill himself and I'm just gonna be depressed at the end of this book. But he didn't. And I'm so happy that, you know, I complained about how his family treated him after his attempted suicides, but I'm very happy that his brothers, you know, tried to step up as much as they could without, you know, their father knowing. I'm just happy that they were there for him, and in the end did what he needed them to do, which was get him straight. But I don't know if anyone enjoyed me just rambling on about this book and how much I really, really love this book. I think I'm definitely gonna try to get The Setting Sun. Is that what his other book is called? I think that's what it's called. I'm gonna try to get Dazai's The Setting Sun, because after reading this, like literally in the middle, like I read not even the full first notebook and I was like, I should have gotten The Setting Sun for Christmas too, because I could just tell that I already loved him. He was a very depressing writer, which was very interesting to read. I've read a lot of things that don't end in happy endings, but this was like specifically depressing somehow. I can't really describe it. Next though I have Chuya Nakahara's, look at me trying to like roll my R's and stuff, but Chuya Nakahara's this book of poems. I think I'm gonna try to read those, so probably my next like book that I'm gonna be talking about are his poems, which I read a couple before reading this, and what a contrast between these two, I can say. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little book rambling at all, and I hope that any of you that are watching will go and get those poems and will read them, so that way the next time I come out with a video we can have like a little book club. If you guys have read this book before, have any opinions on this book that, or any like thoughts you want to share, just put them in the comments below.